What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. If you guys are stopping by the channel for the first time, do your boy a favor, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and go ahead and smash that like button while you're at it. I would totally appreciate that. Well, guys, we've been monitoring the Fed. We've been monitoring the stock market, the housing market, and it is very clear that the cost of living has shifted, and it is very unlikely that it will reverse course and go back the other way. Now, of course, CPI inflation numbers are coming down a little bit. Fed's working its course, raising interest rates, and we're expecting additional rate hikes going forward for 2023. At least, probably realistically, 2 more rate hikes. But the simple fact of the matter is that one of the greatest wealth transfers in our lifetime is happening, and it's happening right before our very eyes. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize this, and they are going to be completely wiped out in a sense that this wealth transfer is going to take place, and they're going to find themselves in a situation where they can't afford basic necessities, living expenses, housing, rent, gas, food. These expenses will continue to climb. Now, we may see a little bit of a pullback here and there, but by and large, we are entering a new world economy. And this is going to be unlike what we've seen in the past. And part of this shift that we're seeing in this new world economy is going to come from the evolution of technology, AI, and we're seeing this already in the form of jobs being eliminated from the workforce. Not just companies not having enough business to support the number of employees that they have, but there's a different shift here, and a lot of people are asleep at the wheel. There's a shift where positions are being eliminated because the role is no longer needed. You're seeing bank branches shut down. Why? Fewer and fewer people are needing to even go into the branches. So why pay for rent at a branch where no one's even going in there anymore, right? Why do that? We can save money as a business, as a bank, and eliminate that commercial rent, eliminate that commercial mortgage note or whatever the case is, and just dump it. And eliminate the physical heads, eliminate the workforce that worked in those banks, and move on to more profitable means and ventures. This is one example. Truck drivers. Truck drivers are, that's an industry that you're always going to need deliveries. Goods need to move, whether it's raw materials, finished products, they need to move from one location to another. Companies like Amazon and any other type of e-commerce business depend on delivering of their goods. Well, goods are still going to be delivered, but truck drivers may not be doing the delivering. And as automation rolls out, truck drivers may see less and less work coming their way. This is not going to be an overnight situation, but it will happen. And the concerning part is that many truck drivers, I've spoken to a number of different truck drivers who earn well over 6 figures, $100,000 a year plus. Some of them are owner operators. They're running their own businesses. They're business owners who may or may not have hired drivers. They may have a team. They may just be an owner operator, and they're not very, it's just them. It's mom and pop only. And they're not necessarily looking to expand. But the simple fact of the matter is that being a truck driver is one of those industries that allowed a high school dropout. They allowed a college dropout. They allowed someone who may have been incarcerated at one point to earn $100,000 per year and support their family. And the concerning part about this is that this is a tremendous opportunity for a lot of people. And as we look at the trajectory of the economy and evolution and society, it is clear that The days of this role, the days of this business are numbered. Now, the truth is, we're entering a new world economy, and people are struggling financially. Some people, not everyone. There's a lot of people doing very, very well. These people understand money. These people understand money, and they're ahead of the curve, and they're staying ahead of the curve by remaining educated. And they're preparing themselves educationally, strategically, and financially for what is coming. And we are seeing the middle class ultimately get wiped out one by one. And this could be a good thing or a bad thing, depends on where you're positioned. If the middle class gets wiped out, you have to understand the middle means that it's in between two other sides. So if you're in the middle class, you're either going to get squeezed up or you're going to get squeezed down. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to get squeezed up or do you want to get squeezed down? But either way, you're going to get squeezed out of the middle class. The middle class is definitely going away, is definitely shrinking. Now, again, the economy has changed and some people are struggling, but again, other people are doing well. Now, if we think back, how we need to understand where we were to understand where we're going so that you can win, so that you can survive, right? And if you're watching this channel, you don't want to just survive. You want to freaking win. I want to freaking win, and I want you to win. So you got to ask yourself, well, how did we get here, right? So if we think back, think about how life was back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Like you had single income households. You had single income households back in the 1970s. A single income covered, typically it was the man who worked, the husband, the man of the house, And it's funny because I remember when I was a kid, I used to stay with my grandmother a lot, and people would call the house and they would say, typically if it was like a telemarketer, and telemarketers were so freaking annoying back then. They would always call, and you had I would answer the phone, and it was one of those phones that were on the wall with a really long cord. And this cord, I swear, it would run the whole length of the house if you wanted to, this curly cord. Anyway, so I'd answer the phone, and the telemarketer inevitably would say, is the man of the house home? Now, I'm 8 years old, either my grandfather was there or he wasn't, right? And that's how it was, because they knew at the time that the man of the house was the decision maker. The man in the house was the breadwinner. He was bringing home the bacon. He was the income earner, the single income earner in many cases during that time. That single income covered the mortgage, food, gas, maybe an annual vacation, college tuition, and it was all that was needed. He may or may not have needed overtime. He would likely have worked for a company that offered a pension. So at some point in time, he would be able to retire. Social Security was in play as it is today, but it was definitely more reliable and more robust at the time. So life was fairly simple and fairly easy. In general, obviously, people struggled at that time as they struggle today. But when you look at the statistics on median household incomes today compared to back in the 1970s, as we're talking about, I mean, it is tremendously different. Today, home prices have increased dramatically. Car prices, back then, people would buy a car with cash. Today, no one even thinks or talks about buying a car with cash because the average car today is like $50,000 brand new. And most people don't have $50,000 laying around to just drop on a brand new car. So most people go into debt. They finance it. Hopefully they have decent credit so they can get a decent interest rate on that car payment, and they pay it off over the course of, last I checked, people are getting car loans for as long as 108 months in some cases. It's ridiculous just to afford to get to work. And that doesn't even include college, putting your kids in school. So Today, a single income household generally doesn't exist. Today, a single income household will not be able to afford the lifestyle that you may need in order to be comfortable. And so we have evolved from a single income household to a multi-income household just to survive. Let me adjust this camera. I think that looks pretty good. So yeah, there's definitely a shift taking place here. And today, just to get by, you need a dual income household. Husband and wife are working. That is the reality today, folks. And even if husband and wife are working today, there are plenty of examples of people still struggling, even though there's a dual income household. So it's wild. It's like, okay, like when you look at the fact that there's two people working, you would think that people would be doing better, right? But this is the impact that inflation is having on the cost of living compared to the wages, right? Like before, you used to be able to get gas for like $1 a gallon, right? $1 a gallon for gas. A single income earner for the household was enough to support the family. But that was back when the US dollar had more purchase power. You know, I mean, you got to look at the link between inflation and the devaluation of our US dollar, also known as currency or fiat currency. And if you look at the fact that, you know, the devaluation of the US dollar really started to take a significant hit. It took place after this decision was executed to take the US dollar off the gold standard back in 1971. Whose brilliant freaking idea was that? Well, I'll tell you what, the brilliant idea was catering to the uber wealthy and those who understood money and how it works would benefit from this detachment of the US dollar from the gold standard in 1971. Now, anyone who didn't understand money, they were getting screwed. And they've been getting screwed slowly. And so, you know, if you look at Federal Reserve's power, their immense power to control the economy, to control the value of currency, it's incredible. You know, I mean, first of all, the Federal Reserve doesn't necessarily only control the US dollar. It controls other currencies, because as the Federal Reserve raises or lowers interest rates, this is manipulating the value of the US dollar. But in addition to that, the US dollar influences the value of other currencies. So the Federal Reserve's power is incredibly strong. And so literally the Federal Reserve, by manipulating the US dollar, since it's being detached from the gold standard, it can literally manipulate the value of other currencies. The the euro, the peso, the pound, trying to think of all these other currencies out here. Heck, I'm pretty sure once the BRICS nations get together and they create their own currency, it's going to influence that as well. The dinar. So the Fed can control, and the Fed does control, printing money. It controls the spending power of money. It controls people's savings rates, and it also controls the wages that Americans own. But the wages that Americans earn. But here's the thing, guys. You got to ask yourself, how do we win? How do we not just survive, but how do we win? Like, what do we need to do to win? And beyond survive, how do we win in this new world economy? Right? Now, most people, including myself, before 2020 had no idea what the heck inflation was. Yo, drop me a comment right now if you didn't really know what inflation meant before the pandemic. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to just go ahead and admit my ignorance. I don't care. I don't care what people think about me. terms of, whether I knew something or not. I'm educating myself on a regular basis. So if I didn't know something before, I have the ability to learn something today and tomorrow and continuously educate myself going forward. So don't be ashamed if you didn't know what inflation was before. And even if you don't know what inflation is today, let's talk about it a little bit, right? So most people had no idea what inflation was, but by and large, inflation is the devaluation of your currency. And your currency is always in relationship to something else. So like, if you had purchased a house in 1990, no, let's just say 2000, right? So the year 2000, you bought a house, it's $100,000. And back in 2000, there were houses for $100,000. And maybe there are parts of the country where there's houses for $100,000 still. But let's just say you bought it for $100,000. Today, that same house is probably worth about $225, $250, right? So why did that happen? Well, you have the asset appreciation. There's one thing, right? Assets tend to appreciate because there's demand that goes up in relationship, or excuse me, there's demand that can change. And if that demand goes up in relationship to the supply, then typically the asset value will increase. So that's one reason why home prices went up, right? At the same time, though, interest rates. If money becomes cheaper, then that's increasing the money supply. If the money supply increases, then the assets tend to increase in value as well, because property, materials, assets, they're always valued in relationship to the money supply and demand. And so as the money supply increased, the value of properties and just about everything else that's in demand also went up. This is why wages also went up faster than we had seen in the last 30 years. In the last 3 years, wages have actually increased faster than ever. But wages did not increase as fast as asset values did. Wages did not increase as fast as the cost of food, the cost of living. CPI numbers said at the height of our, the past 3 years, we had hit roughly 9% CPI inflation. But that CPI number is a little misleading, maybe intentionally, unintentionally, who knows, but it's not 100% accurate. There are many different facets of the economy that went up in cost, far greater than only 9%. There are aspects of our economy that went up 30% in cost. And so, did your wages go up 30%? I doubt it. Unless you were a business owner, they didn't go up 30%. Unless you were an investor in the stock market, for example, your wages, your income, your passive income generated from your investments may have gone up 30% over the past 3 years. Okay. But if you were a wage earner, typical wage earners did not see 30% gains in their income, right? And so inflation has been slowly destroying your ability to buy stuff, basically. And so if you didn't know what inflation was before the pandemic, just about everybody and their mom got a quick, fast, and in a hurry lesson on what inflation is and how it's going to impact your family. Basically, that $100 you used to spend going on, go grocery shopping, it used to fill the buggy or fill the basket, and everybody got what they needed. It doesn't cut it anymore. That $100 gets you about half that basket now. So in order to get the same amount of food into that basket, you might need $175 in there. You might need to put $175 into the cash register at Walmart or wherever you happen to shop at in order to get the same amount. And so this happens when you have an increase in the money supply without actually creating or without wealth actually being generated. So to give you an example of what I mean by this, imagine you have a pizza pie, and before inflation, you slice that pizza pie up and you got 8 slices, right? But after inflation, they've added more money into the money supply. So if you add more money into the money supply without actually creating more wealth, that is the equivalent of taking your large pizza pie, which only had originally 8 slices, and then saying, okay, let's cut these again. So now you cut each slice in half, and now there's 16 slices instead of the 8, right? And so this is inflation. Like one slice of pizza from your large pizza pie originally, when it only had 8 slices, you might get full off of 2 slices, right? So 2 slices and you're good. Now, if you're me, you probably eat the whole pie. But if you're a regular person, 2 slices, you're probably good. Well, after inflation, they've sliced all of the slices again. So there's no longer 8 slices. There's 16 slices with inflation. And this is just a super simplistic example, right? So instead of 8 slices per pie, there's 16 slices per pie. And so now you need 4 slices to get equally full as you did before when there were only was only 8 slices, right? Now your 4 slices after inflation, they're the total same. They're ultimately the same amount of pizza as it was when it was 2 slices before inflation. But now each slice is half the size of the original. So now instead of getting, being full on 2 slices, you now need 4 slices to get full. This is probably the easiest way I can think of explaining inflation. And inflation will continue to go forward. Why? Because the Fed has already promised this to us. Not to say that the Fed can't break their promises, but the simple fact of the matter is that the Fed is incentivized to keep inflation in play. And their target is 2%. Why 2%? Well, there's a number of different reasons, but one of the reasons why inflation is targeted at 2% is because before 2020, as we talked about earlier in this video, most people didn't know what inflation was. Why was that? I would say that most people didn't know what inflation was because they weren't economists and they didn't need to know really, right? So unless you're an accountant or a CPA or tax person or a business owner or an advanced level investor, like most people just don't really need to know what inflation is for the most part. I mean, everyone really should know, but no one really needed to know because it didn't impact them to an extent where it's like that important. So basically, when inflation's at 2%, most people won't feel it. That's one of the reasons why the Fed likes 2%, because they want inflation. They want to basically steal from you in the form of increasing the supply of money. But if they steal from you too aggressively, then you'll notice it. They don't want that. It's kind of like the leaves change on a tree over the course of several months. And you don't really notice it until, there's some point and you're like, oh, wow, the leaves are changing, right? But it's very gradual. But if your leaves on your tree changed overnight, you'd see that, you'd notice it, and you'd have a problem with it. Well, you might not have a problem with it, but you'd notice it. And that's the same thing with the inflation. If inflation's at 9%, 10%, 30%, people are going to see it. They're going to complain. It's going to harm too many people. But if it's only at 2%, most people will go about their lives and they will never, ever notice that money is being stolen away from them. And you might be wondering, well, what do you mean money's being stolen away from me? Well, you got to look at how money works, right? So the velocity of money is very important to understand. So, for example, when inflation goes up, you typically will see, when inflation goes up, you will typically see, I got friends coming over, so I'm just like checking, goods become more expensive. So if you're a business owner and goods become more expensive, then that means that your revenue is going up. Now, if you're not a business owner and all you have is expenses and your one paycheck as a worker, as a wage earner, then you're receiving all of the negatives that come with inflation. So if you don't own stocks, if you're not invested in the stock market, if you're not a business owner, then you have no way to benefit from inflation. And so this is part of how some of the greatest wealth building and wealth transfer is taking place here. My bad, y'all. I had to let my family in. So, but yeah, so this is part of how this wealth transfer is taking place here. So like if you own shares in Walmart, for example, right? And you have inflation, whether it's 2%, 20%, doesn't matter. Prices are going up in Walmart. Well, if you own shares in Walmart and these prices are going up, well, what do you think's happened to Walmart? Walmart's receiving more revenue. Walmart's receiving more income. And when we saw stimulus checks going out, the stock market rallied. Part of why the stock market rallied is because when stimulus checks were going out, they were hitting people's bank accounts. And what did people do with it? Some people saved that money. Some people paid off debt. Some people invested in the stock market. But most people spent that money on stuff. They bought new cars. They bought new TVs. They bought new smartphones. They bought new laptops. They bought new sneakers, Jordans, Yeezys, Louis Vuitton. They bought Christian Louboutins. They bought Birkin bags. They bought Coach bags. They bought whatever, new refrigerator. People were using these stimulus checks to buy houses. Like, people spent this money. So where did they spend it? They spent it at businesses. So if you were the business owner, you were receiving the stimulus money and it was stimulating the economy. And so when these stimulus checks were going out, this was the effect of having more slices created inside of the same pie. And so more people were giving more of their slices to these businesses, and the businesses were getting more and more of the slices, leaving people with less and less for those who weren't invested in businesses, for those who were not invested in the stock market. And so we have to look at it like, okay, well, how do we win, right? How do we combat this? How do we stop being a victim to inflation? How do we partake in the greatest wealth transfer of our lifetimes, right? And I think it definitely just boils down to you have to earn more money. You have to earn more money, number one, and you should always be increasing your income. Why? Because you know inflation will always be there. So if your income's not increasing, you are actually losing money by standing still every single year. You're going to get screwed just by default if you don't earn more money. Simple, plain and simple. How do you earn more money? Well, you could work overtime. You can increase your skills and learn higher value skills. You can create side hustles. You can start a home-based business, a small business. You can invest your money into things that increase in value. If you convert your money, this is what I do. I like to convert my money into assets that increase in value. So when your assets increase in value, that's basically passive income. This is a wealth generating mechanism that basically anyone can do. Now, you don't have to invest in hedge funds or anything like that. And I don't even do that. But, you know, if you invest in assets that increase in value, that is one way of growing your net worth and getting ahead of inflation. And so, you know, I want to have ownership in companies that are benefiting from inflation, you know, and how do I do that? Well, at a very high level, without getting a whole lot of detail on this super long video already, I'm looking at investing in index funds, ETFs, stocks, mutual funds. You can do all of this on different platforms like M1 Finance, Vanguard, SoFi, E-Trade, Charles Schwab. There's a number of different investment platforms you can use to acquire these assets and to increase your income and to increase your net worth. Starting a business is a great way to increase your income, right? Now, of course, you know, there's a lot of different ways of doing this. And me personally, I like starting businesses that have little to no out-of-pocket expense to get started. Why? Because I don't like to lose money, and I like to get started into businesses that have a fairly high opportunity to make money and a low likelihood of losing money. And so I focus on businesses that have low startup capital requirements. And if you guys want to learn more about that, definitely join us over in the Patreon community. There's a link in the description down below. If you want to chat with me, there's an option for that as well. But these are the things that will move the needle forward. Now, of course, there's no guarantees in anything. There's no guarantee that if you invest in the stock market, you're going to make money. There's no guarantee if you invest in a business or start your own business, whether it's an online business, a home-based business, or whatever. There's no guarantee you're going to make money and that you will not lose money. However, the more educated you are, and the more you're paying attention and willing to learn, and the longer you stick to it, the greater your chances are to be profitable and to be successful. The way I see it is this. I don't believe that it's a matter of if you're going to make money when you start a business. The way I look at it is, if I start a business, I'm going to make money. The question is, when am I going to make money? So the way I see it is as long as I stick with it, I will eventually succeed and I will make money. Now, thankfully, through many failures and many lessons learned from the failures, I can significantly shorten the amount of time needed to become profitable in a business, because I've already learned so many lessons already. There's certain things I just know better not to do. Just like with investing, I know better not to invest in certain things, and I know to invest in other things instead. I know that there's tons of traps out there. And so this is how to prepare for this new world economy that we're entering into. Now, I want to share more information with you guys, but I think this video is a little bit too long. My family is here, but if you guys want to hear more, if you want to learn more about how to prepare for this new world economy and how to succeed, how to win, definitely join us over in the Patreon community. If you guys made it this far in the video, do your boy a favor, drop a quick like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. I appreciate you guys, and I'm gonna see you on the next one.